Blackbird is a taut and compelling 6-episode crime drama streaming on Apple TV. In a streaming landscape where whole episodes and sometimes whole seasons of shows can feel like filler, Blackbird is a visceral reminder that storytelling can be efficient and pacey whilst also rewarding the viewer with layered narrative and sophisticated character development. Blackbird is based off real events. Taron Egerton plays Jimmy Keane, a 90s drug peddler and seller of illicit heavy-duty weaponry who is intelligent, charming, but arrogant and unfulfilled in ways he can't or is reluctant to account for or explore. He is eventually busted by the FBI and incarcerated for 10 years. His father is played by the great Ray Liotta in what would be his final role before passing away. It is poignant that Liotta should depart on such a high note, with a performance that provides a strong emotional pull and motivation for Jimmy, as his decline in health spurs Jimmy to look for a means to reduce his jail term. A serial killer has been abducting and murdering young women and girls across Indiana and Ohio. A peculiar and pathetic figure, Larry Hall, a chubby Civil War reenactment enthusiast with huge sideburns, has a strange impulse to take credit for crimes he almost certainly hasn't committed as a means of garnering attention. He is played with eerie intensity by Paul Walter Hauser, a performance that subverts the common portrayals of serial killers as disturbingly blank or as a connivingly sharp, compelling antagonist. Hauser's performance is docile, ponderous, abstracted. He might be a monster or just a tedious eccentric. The conceit is that the viewer, in the hands of beautifully balanced writing, is left unsure whether Larry Hall is in fact the serial killer, an ambiguity that persists even when the viewer sees Hall sent to prison. A pair of agents, Sipade Moafi and Greg Kinnear, become engaged in trying to ascertain the truth, with their and the viewer's instincts swinging one way then the next, a dynamic that seems to linger and persist even when the reality has begun to manifest. Jimmy Keane is offered a deal, a complete commutation of his sentence, if he is willing to go undercover in an extremely dangerous jail full of the most soulless criminals, and gather from Hall the burial location of one of his victims. The tropes of serial killer thrillers, undercover roles in prison, a criminal's redemption arc, and psychological games involving a psychopath are each well worn. But the mix in this series is elevated by the ambiguities and tensions, whereby it is possible Hall has or is beginning to discern he is being probed and worked. Yet it remains possible he is a blank slate and a fantasist with almost no social skills or perception. The intercutting between the agent's faltering and frustrating investigation, Ray Liotta's physical decline, and Jimmy's tense and often stymied efforts at working Hall is an exemplary effort at balance and suspense. There is even a touch of magical realism, whereby one of the murderer's victims, a young teen girl, reflects and narrates her experience, which, in the hands of a lesser director, might have caused the gritty realism and momentum to lapse, but here is used sparingly enough to add extra pathos. A highlight of this series is the prison atmosphere. In many such prison dramas, the cast of inmates can blur functionally into the background. In Blackbird, amidst the worst degenerates imaginable, the opposite occurs. As a viewer, your attention is often drawn away from the center of the frame and Jimmy's face to the background. The realism and sense of immersion has you often assessing the protagonists and your peripheral vision, peering and scanning and bracing for threats, wary of blind spots, entrances and passageways, confined spaces, and your eye is also constantly drawn to the milling presences of guards, who represent a measure of certainty and protection. A prison riot is shocking in its anarchy and savagery. Eventually, we feel that Jimmy is in peril and at risk of exposure and calculating attacks more often than we feel an uneasy normalcy. The real-life story of Larry Hall and Jimmy Keane lacks much of the gripping narrative complexity and tense ambiguities developed in Blackbird, but that's okay, because it is perfectly fine for showrunners and scriptwriters to elevate and expand source material. Set in the 90s, the show also has a kick-ass soundtrack with some awesome nostalgic needle drops. Taron Egerton's character arc as Jimmy is a rich exploration of masculinity, good and bad, a subject which isn't always tackled with much sophistication or subtlety in the modern world of screenwriting. Keane's staunch charm but emotional malaise, if depicted by many modern writers, would probably be focused on as an exemplar of generic toxic masculinity or as socially constructed masculinity, to be ideally deconstructed before his character arc could be satisfyingly and fulsomely completed. So it is satisfying that near the end, redeemed and renewed, he still exhibits some of the same flirtatious and sexually assertive and confident characteristics in evidence at the beginning. Blackbird is a compelling watch, an efficient 6 episodes that is well worth your time, and will likely linger in the imagination for some time afterward.